Welcome back to another video. Waiting for the preview. This one is about the Fellowship of the Ring from the Lord of the Rings trilogy. Talking about the film directed, part produced and part written by Peter Jackson, based on the book by Tolkien. I think we all know the movie I'm talking about. Now, I feel like I bought the DVD of one of them and then the VHS of one of the trilogy, and I thought, I'll try and put the set together. I put together the set and I thought, I kind of feel like watching this again. My experience was that I saw the first film on its own at the cinema. I'm a terrible film watcher, especially at cinemas. This was back when it came out. I think it was 2003, somewhere in there. And then I saw the movie Marathon. So I didn't watch the second one. Then the third one came out, and I saw the movie Marathon, where it was the first, the second, and the third films, one after the other. And I remember I was with a friend, and I've since sort of dropped out of contact with that friend, but it was hot. And it was unbearably hot in the cinema. It was in summer, so it started probably mid-afternoon or something. And these are long films. I know the first one is almost 3 hours, and we'll get to that. And so, between being tired and hot and uncomfortable, and having already seen the first one, and my friend knocking his drink over, it was just not a good way to enjoy the trilogy. And I'm kind of glad that so much time has passed now that I've actually forgotten completely what those other two films are like, and I'll get onto those in another video. I just remember the third one, even at the cinema, being half asleep, was a very good movie, and it seemed like the first one wasn't so great. So the Fellowship of the Ring, look, man, where do I start? The Frodo character, a lot of people said, is a little bit annoying. Like he's a little bit too uncertain and, what's the term, insecure or unconfident, or, I don't know, whiny. Or if you've read the book, and I highly recommend reading the book first. So I read the book it must have been in the very early 2000s, I think, possibly late 90s. That's just like the Frodo character in the book, especially in the first part of the book. So that element is reproduced quite well, and watching it now, it's not quite as acutely annoying as it was. So I think maybe I was a bit oversensitive to it for some reason. Maybe it's just the benefit of having a few more years behind me now. And the acting, I forget the actor's name, but the acting of Frodo is superb. Absolutely superb. And that would not have been an easy role to play, because that is an emotional role with the call for subtleties to the emotion and the expression and the projection of that character. And you are never snap out of your, disbelief because the acting was bad for that character. Was it Elijah Wood? And the Frodo character is quite well scripted as well. However, the Sam character, which adds comic relief, and in a lot of ways Sam is the hero of the story. The Sam character, I don't think is well scripted. I don't remember the Sam character being particularly funny in the book, but I'm guilty of not it's probably good not to read the book right now, because I want to review this as a film. The comic relief does snap you out of that disbelief. I get that the hobbits are light-hearted, innocent, cheerful folk, simple folk who enjoy, the pleasures of life. And that comes through in the book very strongly in the first part. And I guess you could argue there's a bit of a fine line between projecting that character of the hobbits and creating an excess of humour that is incongruent with the atmosphere and the story. I think if I was re-editing the film, I would take out, it would be actually very easy. There's some things that are easy to change with editing and some which are hard. I would just take out, it might only be 3 or 4 lines from the whole film, and just take that comic relief out. You don't want to break the tension. It's not, the film doesn't develop tension and suspense in a really strong way. It doesn't do that. That's not a criticism, I'm just characterizing the film. That's when comic relief is welcome, like in a cheap horror movie, or even a not cheap horror movie. So there's no need for it, and it's just slightly annoying. And it's like same with action films. I don't like the comic relief that's in there. I want to escape to another world, not be reminded that I'm just watching a movie. I naturally want to fall into the film and immerse myself in the film. I'm not an analytical film viewer, except nowadays sometimes when I'm trying to learn about filmography, if you like. So that's a criticism, but one that's fairly easily fixed. And sometimes the acting of those, it's almost like slightly overacting. There's a battle scene, I forget if it's in by the way, spoiler alert, if you haven't seen the film, stop watching now, please. I haven't given anything away yet, but stop watching now. When they're down in the mines, I think they're in some battle, and I guess one of the hobbits have just learned how to use the swords, and they're blasting away these orcs and the cave troll thing, and it might have even been a scene above ground, I forget, but I think it's one of the other hobbits, not Sam, Mary or someone, or Pippin. He just yells out, "I think I'm getting the hang of this," and it's just stupid and unnecessary. Cut that out. Anyway, moving on. The story itself, I was curious as to whether, because Tolkien was such an intelligent person, whether there was like deeper meaning within the film and the story than the superficial high fantasy jaunt, right? And I think there is. I just think it's open to interpretation, and it's perhaps more of a feeling rather than, or a theme, or an energy rather than some kind of explicit metaphor or analogy or anything like that. But there's so much wrong with the world today. There's so much evil. The evil is in control. And I was very cognizant of this good versus evil, not in an entertaining way, but in a real serious way. This battle of good versus evil, as I began to watch the film. And that is very much the essence of the film. And it's interesting that, the characters are relatively pure, at least so far, with the exception of the Boromir guy who tries to take the ring. But then, I guess where you get into the complexity of human nature is where the point's made, and that's one example, that men are imperfect, they're weak, they lust after power, and they will do the wrong thing. But that point being made, and the dwarves are sort of greedy, and but that point being made, the characters are quite pure, and that's quite an old-fashioned aspect to the film. But I don't feel like that makes... Sometimes that can make, especially with these awful superhero movies that are dying off now, I hope. Moral purity can make a film very boring, and the characters very empty. Stereotyped and empty and just dull. But this film doesn't suffer from that. So, I'm not sure I have a resolution on that question. Should there... it is a very long film. It's a very long... The trilogy is very long. Each individual book is not that long, to be fair. And maybe... I feel like the Strider or Aragorn character is more developed before he becomes sort of Aragorn. He's more... You I think, get to know the character more as Strider in the book for a while. And there's... that character is more interesting earlier on. So yeah, the character development in the movie... I think it was... There's so many parts to the film, I think that was always going to be a challenge. I think it's done quite well. I think the Gimli character is, again, too comical for me to really appreciate. And the costume around Gimli just looks a little bit fake, if I'm honest. I get that it might be that they're trying to recreate imagery and vibe and energy and atmosphere that's in the book, but I just feel like every time that character speaks, it's kind of a joke. And yeah, just a slightly fade. The film visually is excellent, but that character was not quite represented all that well. It looks like a fucking made up, movie costume for dwarf. I'm just saying. So yeah, Gimli. The film is almost 3 hours long. It's 2 hours and 50 minutes. It's unusual for a film to be that long and you're not waiting for it to end. And you're not, knowing that there's some battle and everything's going to be okay and blah blah blah. So you're not impatient despite the length of the film, and that's an incredible achievement for the director and people who've written the script. I think probably, despite me saying that, it could have been made a little bit shorter. It's approaching the point where maybe there are too many sort of battle scenes that don't really need to be quite as long as they are. I remember the cave troll being really amazing in the cinema, but I feel like, again, this is a review speaking from 2024. That kind of imagery and CGI sort of monster graphics is now very, very commonplace. And any kind of fantasy sci-fi film seems to have something like that in it, which very rarely really adds a lot of interest to the film. And there are a couple of films that came out around then. I think one was Sucker Punch and one was Tomb Raider, that had that similar epic monster scene with just incredible computer graphics, and it was just mind-blowing. And I guess for the first few films that did that, it was incredible. Sucker Punch is a brilliant film, one of the best films you ever see. Tomb Raider, I remember, it was pretty good too, but not brilliant. And so, I guess having that in a very good film, and that'll be this is a very good film. Exactly where it is between very good and excellent is what we're trying to work out here, I think. And I'm okay, like, I'd maybe make that, I think that is one of the battle scenes that went too long, is the fight with the cave troll and the orcs in the mine. The scenes with the wraiths, the 9, were very good. I seem to remember, I can barely remember any of these films from the movies, but I seem to remember that was one of the best parts at the cinema, when he's trying to hide from the wraiths, or the 9. If you're going to watch this film, watch it when you're awake and alert. Don't watch it when you do actually have to think and pay attention to this film. And I think because I wanted to watch the film and I did pay attention, I wasn't trying to analyze it, but I was just paying attention and trying to follow every little fact that was revealed with the dialogue and so on. You know, the mechanics of the ring and of Mordor and Sauron's, the Eye of Sauron, and how it all works and denying it. When you absorb that and understand that, it really, and you know, it sounds, well, of course, you know, that's how you bring the plot together, but I think there's a danger you can just watch it as a bit of a hack and slash fantasy without paying attention. And so, yeah, I found that by paying attention, I particularly enjoyed this film. The acting of Ian McKellen for Gandalf was extraordinary, flawless. Christopher Lee was very, very good too. I don't think either of those roles was particularly easy to pull off, because each role was perhaps a little prone to becoming cheesy, but neither did. I think the fight scene between Gandalf and Sauron was, again, something that could have been redone in a more subtle way, with, instead of, you know, being thrown around by magic spells and shit, there could have been a lot less of that and some far more subtle way of depicting an epic battle between two magicians. Be a matter of script writing and direction and camera angles and facial expressions and the music or sound effects behind it and so on. But I just, that did look a little bit cheesy, and it's like, you know, are you really meant to believe that, you know, 80-year-old men, I know they're magic and everything, but like getting thrown around this rocky, you know, marble or whatever it is, spire. It's just a bit. I really liked the scene with the moth and the bird. I thought that was really quite beautiful. Yeah, so the film has these different, like, scenes, just one after another, you know, the Shire and the mine and the mountain and the battle with, you know, Gandalf and I just said his name and now it's slipped out of my head. Not Sauron, but Saruman. Yeah, it's just it's very sequential. It's a very sequential film. You can kind of see how, like, okay, we've got to do this bit, then we've got to film this bit, then we've got to film this bit, then we've got to film this bit, and stitch it all together. But it works. Like, I don't mind. That's the story. It's an epic story with lots of different chapters, and that's I'm okay with the film being this way. And of course, because it's not the end of the trilogy, you never really know what's going to happen at the end. And I think that's why you're not waiting for the end, because you don't really know where the end is going to be, unless perhaps you've just read the book very recently. And that helps avoid that phenomenon of being towards the end of a film and just waiting for it to be over. But like I said, I would maybe cut another at least 5 minutes out of it, just to speed it up just a little bit and make those battle scenes a little bit less, I don't know, tedious or even cheesy. I thought some of the acting of I think it's Hugo Weaving who plays the senior elf, and again, I think it's part script as well. It's just, it does feel like you're watching someone acting the character. And it's probably part that the makeup, it's difficult to really pin it down. But it just doesn't, like Harry, it's like Gimli, it just doesn't quite seem natural. And again, a very sort of morally righteous and quite stern character, but it just seems a bit wooden. And it seems to be the nature of the character, so maybe it kind of comes across as not being perfect acting. I think perhaps there needed to be some background sound effects or something, or some different camera angles, some different direction. Maybe those scenes with that character could have been directed in a quite different way, and it would have been better. But you've got to remember, these films were like epic with epic costumes and suits of armor and reproduction of weapons and big name actors and filming in New Zealand and a certain budget and deadlines, and it used to be considered I was reading about the animated film from the 70s, and it used to be considered that you could never film this in real life. It was just too difficult. And so, computer effects allowed it to eventually happen, but still, it's such a monstrous project. You can totally forgive not just one or two imperfections, but quite a few imperfections along the way. I think, oddly enough, I was wondering, could there be another attempt at making a Lord of the Rings movie for the whole trilogy? And now that I think about it, by looking at the groundwork that was laid by this film and the other two, probably you could learn which scenes didn't quite work, learn which characters weren't quite adapted to film properly. But these films are hard to beat. And they did have the benefit of, I don't know what the budget was, it must have been fucking enormous. They threw everything but the kitchen sink at this film. That might not ever happen again. Maybe in 100 years, but, we'll see. I mean, in 100 years, if we're still on this earth, speaking of good versus evil, if it is remade, it'll be just perhaps very, very computerized. And it could be very good, but to manually film it again would be a huge ask, and a lot more expensive now than it was then. I remember reading somewhere that Peter Jackson said, one of the regrets he has is that he can't really sit down and watch the films and enjoy them. just because he was so deeply involved. And there's a little anecdote, like the producer was on his case, and he gets a call in the middle of shooting, and it just says, I'm trying to make a fucking film here. I'm doing the best that I can. So you're going to have to wait. It was a call from one of the financiers, I think. So, yeah, an incredibly difficult task to make this film. It's rated 8.9 on IMDb. I don't think I would have it quite that high. I feel like with IMDb, I don't know. I guess the movie's been out a long time now. I wonder if they actually, I don't know when IMDb came out, but yeah, 8.9 is a little higher. I would give it somewhere between probably 7.8 and 8.5. Just because you can pick out these slight faults all through the film. They're not faults, they're just things that maybe, as a critic, an armchair critic, might look at and think that was done okay, but it wasn't done. There's certain things that weren't masterpiece, right? Because a 10 out of 10, you want a 10 out of 10, it's got to be a masterpiece on all counts, right? But yeah, it was. You felt it's the kind of film, like on this occasion, it does leave you thinking about it a bit afterwards. It really captures. It's a serious film, and it does capture that energy. And if you're paying attention and you're invested in the story, it does. You do feel the film, and I think the best films have to make you feel what the characters are feeling. And this film achieves that. So, is there anything that really speaks in 2024? I think the good versus evil is more intense, and the worm tongue character and so on hasn't been introduced yet, but I think the ability to link this to the real world might improve as I get through the other films. And you don't really see a lot of the Smeagol character. But it's like, is that character a little bit... I gotta admit, when I start hearing Smeagol's voice, and that it's my precious... Yeah, that's a little bit cheesy. And it was so... That became a bit of a meme. I can actually do a pretty good Smeagol impression myself. I won't. But yeah, just a bit cartoonish. I don't know, a bit over the top. A bit childish. And okay, it is a Hobbit character. But almost like something from Sesame Street. I don't know. I think, again... giving Smeagol a different voice, maybe not using the words "my precious" quite so often, would be an improvement. But yeah, just the general feeling you get from the film is very. It is powerful. I think a lot of people won't feel that. If you're not concerned with all the problems of humanity and so on, I don't see how you can really feel the good versus evil aspect, but it is there. So yeah, overall, superb acting, a good screenplay, but not a perfect one. Good direction, but a few scenes that could have been directed very, very differently. But that had to come in through the screenplay, I think. Generally very good acting. The cinematography, I think, is a little bit overrated. It's good. I don't think it's, I mean, for that particular film, I don't think it's amazing, but it is good. Soundtrack, that key, the music that you see during the opening of the film is very good. I mean, it became sort of, I don't want to say meme as well, but it's quite a well composed piece. I think the soundtrack, I think really, I'm guilty of perhaps not analysing that well enough, but I think it was quite good. It wasn't there was nothing really avant-garde about it. There's nothing really artistic about it. The film didn't try, it's not a particularly artistic film. It's a film, it's not an art film. I think some of the scenes were, like with Saruman and Gandalf and perhaps a couple, even the scene with the demon in the bottom of the mine. There was potential there to do something very artistic, and that wasn't the approach that was taken. And that artistry, I think, could have involved like a very heavy soundtrack. So the soundtrack was very. I find epic movie soundtracks generally to be kind of boring. Like, I know some people, like, you can buy CDs with epic movie soundtrack. I don't think like, to me, they're not epic. It's almost like elevator music, but different. A different kind of elevator music. I think it's kind of conceited to really call that music epic at all. Epic would be like 1812. To me, epic should be something like 1812 Overture, So, again, we're nitpicking, but that's what this is about. So yeah, a professional soundtrack, but kind of a standard sort of a soundtrack. And perhaps this film was setting the scene, and as other movies that really kind of followed with the soundtrack what this film was doing. But yeah, just the sheer effort in making this movie and getting it all together. I mean, I can only wonder how many hours of footage they have that was cut out. Be amazing to have access to that and to be able to edit and put together your own version of this film. So yeah, The Fellowship of the Ring in 2024, very, very good film. I'd probably give it an 8. Probably would give it an 8. And I'm looking forward to watching the second and third. It'll be actually a bit sad when I've seen them all. Maybe I'll read. I don't think I have time to read the book. I've only read it once. I had it all in one volume, which is like 1,000-page paperback. It was ridiculous. So yeah, drop a comment. Let me know if you've watched the film recently. Like I said, I hadn't seen it since it came out. And I can't believe it doesn't feel like that long ago, but it's 21 years. It's just that the quality of films back then was kind of like it is now. The special effects, by the way, were generally very good. The bit in the cave where the bridge was falling apart, a bit clunky, and you didn't notice that in the cinema. In the cinema, everything seemed amazing. And a few other areas, things were a bit clunky, and a bit obviously CGI. But no, generally the effects were very good. Not amazing, just very good. So yeah, guys, I think I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. This is unscripted, waffly, thinking on the cuff, thinking out loud. It's just kind of the way I do things here. I don't want to take this shit so seriously that I write a fucking script. I don't know. People like the scripted content on YouTube. They don't like organic, like just speaking from the heart. They don't like raw and real. They want fucking synthetic, scripted. I'll never understand how people can be like that. Anyway, cheerio.